Hey, Geekscapists. I am Tessa Markle, one half of Femme Regard podcast, and this.
I'm Katie Hampton of the Napping Through Happy Hour podcast and several other Geekscape honorable mentions. And we're here today to talk about the amazing Charles Schulz.
Yes, we both connected because we have a huge love of the Peanuts, like stretching back to childhood. So this was really fun for me because I got to really like kind of revisit the actual like history of the Peanuts. I know for me, like I was super into the comics as a kid. I actually would cut them out and collect them for years. I had like a folder of so many of them.
I love that.
And I remember like all the TV specials and movies, like I'd watch one for every holiday, all that kind of stuff. And I collected so much Peanut stuff. Like it was
Here's the thing.
insane.
I wasn't really sure how much Tessa actually did until she sent me a video, and I thought I collect because I collected the comic books and like I have a bunch of like compendiums and some about the author type of stuff. But Tessa sent me this video. There's so much Snoopy. You are lit with Snoopy everywhere.
And that's like after getting rid of so many things too.
I
So
figured. I figured that was the thing I was going to ask you.
yeah, for sure. I think that was really like the first and probably only thing I really committed to collecting. But I remember like as a kid, so my dad was a veterinarian when I was growing up, and he had this client who was a huge Peanuts fan.
Oh,
And this guy was like old enough to be my grandfather. So he had been collecting Peanut stuff like professional level collector
oh
probably
wow.
since it came out. Like his entire house was full. I remember getting to like visit and tour his house and just being in awe.
What exactly did he have?
Literally everything, like things you wouldn't
Okay.
even think existed. I remember like a ceiling fan that had like Snoopy's doghouse on all the fan blades, like so much random crazy stuff. The entire house was full.
That would be a nightmare to clean. But
Mhm.
what do you remember how it started for you? Like for me, I know it was Sunday comics as well, and then it also got me into because there were so many videos and like ABC CBS specials on like Charles Schulz drawing and whatnot that like got me into actually like I even came up with my own comic strip as a kid called Pets with a Z at the end because
Love
that's
it.
my thing. And I remember even like one Halloween, I carved a pumpkin with like the characters from my comic strip, and like no one
Cute.
knew what it was about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember, like, what got me into it or when, it's just kind of one of those, like, as far back as I can remember, I was obsessed, but I'm sure it probably was, like, the TV specials and movies first. I'm sure my
Mm.
parents probably played those for me, and then when I was, like, getting more into reading, I mean, I know comics aren't, they don't take that much talent to read, but,
But
then I started reading every week, so yeah.
oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, there was I had these stacks of book. It was Garfield and it was Peanuts, and I had these compendiums of Peanuts and Garfield that I would take everywhere with me, and like
Mhm.
that was my honestly that was my introduction to comics.
Yeah.
Um and it was also my introduction to like a three-panel joke essentially.
Yep, yep.
For both of them. And I don't know, like just knowing so much in terms of like doing research for this podcast, it's incredible, especially at the time that it came out, just who Charles was as a person, former military man, and you know, bringing sort of that really lighthearted, simplistic, artistic value to his work was such an interesting thing. I feel like diving in. Is there anything that like, you learned that you had no idea about?
Well, I mean, I learned a lot of things about his life, which we can get into, like, little details of, like, what inspired, certain characters and sayings and stuff like that, that I thought was really cool, but I found this quote, that I think kind of, like, is a really good summation of things. It's by Bill Watterson. He said, Peanuts pretty much defines the modern comic strip. So even now, it's hard to see it with fresh eyes. The clean, minimalistic drawings, the sarcastic humor, the unflinching emotional honesty, the inner thoughts of a household pet, the serious treatment of children, the wild fantasies, the merchandising on an enormous scale in
Hmm.
countless ways. Schultz blazed the wide trail that most that most every cartoonist since has tried to follow, which I think is like it's true. Like it really kind of, set
The
the
tone.
inspiration and tone. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because I was listening to a BBC podcast. It was sort of like it was a radio broadcast that they had put out when Schultz had passed away, and he was talking about how Schultz had been all around the world, and there were so many different renditions and like translated into 21 different languages and things like that. And I guess an Italian compendium of Peanuts was being released, and somebody who wrote the foreword was talking about how Schultz managed to make every single one of these characters like the biggest, neuroses or something of adults, which
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, like I mean, especially my like interest in psychology in college, like everything is like Schultz riddled with
Yeah.
like what does depression look like, and what does anxiety look like, and what does somebody who's domineering look like. But one of the quotes that I came across from Schultz himself, which I thought was really apropos, especially for this time and for what comics during like the 40s were
Mhm.
all about stereotypes and those like mega tropes of like the milk toast husband and and the nagging wife and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
the messy room kid, or just the kid who's obnoxious and defiant. But Schultz said kids have to handle just the same curveballs as adults. And that heart of that message, I was like, well, that's what made it so evergreen, because they were
Yeah.
dealing with very adult like things in a very kid like manner. But at the same time, they're dealing with it within the context of it. And growing up with that, what a beautiful mental health gift
Yeah.
that he
Yeah,
provided.
100%.
Yeah. And like, and to be so ingrained in like positive growth as
Mhm.
opposed to like shaming or whatever was an interesting aspect. I feel like, I don't know if you grew up Christian, but my household was very
Yeah.
Christian growing up, and having that kind of content in a lighthearted manner without being like wrist slappy or something like that
Mhm.
was a really cool refreshing take.
Yeah, and I think it's just like that's probably why it appeals to people of all ages too, because it's like it's put out there in such an easy to grasp way, for the kids, but then it's like you're saying like kind of life messages that you're learning and it just they handle it. I don't know, it's so wholesome, but it's also like, I mean, they're torturing poor Charlie Brown the whole time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So you
well, whole
you still
time.
get that like you get to kind of ha 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 at some, like you get satisfaction from both ends of it, in that way.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. And then you also have the beautiful creativity that is Snoopy himself,
Yeah.
and just embodying all of the fantasies that, like the war hero, the really cool guy.
Yeah.
uh, you know, um, what I have to ask, what's one of your favorite little trinkets of Snoopy that you have?
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question. Um Well, there wasn't one in particular, but there was, like, the set of, like before Funko Pops came out,
Uh-huh.
there was, like, Snoopies. They were all just different Snoopies that are, like, in different costumes. You'll see them on that video. There's quite a few on my shelf, but
There
I,
are
like,
so
I
many.
had to catch them all kinda thing.
It honestly, it reminded me of my grandmother and her Precious Moments figurines.
Oh, yeah.
Not to, like, cause any offense or anything like that, but I was just like, "This collection is awesome."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's crazy too, like, I know I'm not the only collector out there. I mean, obviously, I
No.
told you about that guy when I was young, but, like,
Yeah.
so for the 50th anniversary in 2000, my parents took me on this cruise. It was like a Peanuts anniversary cruise,
Yes.
and, like, I look back, I didn't realize it as a kid. I think I was, like, 10 years old, but, like, there were so many more crazy adults on that cruise that were like, "Gotta get to the front of the line, gotta do this," like, the kids, we were just, like, excited to be there, you
Yeah,
know?
and I'm sure were there, like, cast members dressed up as Snoopy and Linus and all
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. I wanna get back to that, briefly, but before we do, I have to know, Did you like in it? Like, how much of the cruise do you remember?
Honestly, not as much as I would like to say that I did.
Understand.
I
You 10.
It was also, yeah, it was, like, the only cruise I'd ever been on. I was just kind of excited for all of it. But I think, in general, they made it a point to, like, kind of build community. They wanted it to be, like, events where, like, kids got to play together and meet other kids and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I thought that was really nice that it wasn't just, like, everybody stand in line to, buy this memorabilia or whatever. So
Right, right, which I'm sure they also had,
well,
but
yeah, of course, of course.
of course, of course. Was it fully, like, just on the ocean? Where did you travel from?
Um, it So I think we pulled out of Miami, if I recall,
Okay.
and then we made like a couple of stops in the Caribbean. So it was still like a full-blown cruise. Like you
Oh
didn't
my
have
god.
to be going for the peanuts thing.
Yeah.
But that was definitely like the overarching theme, and all the events were kind of centered around that. So
Was it put on by, like, Knott's Berry Farm or something? Or, like, who put all that together?
I'm not sure. I
Oh,
think it
sure.
was
I'm sorry, I'm
like
asking you so many, like,
no, you're
production
fine.
details about this
I should have
cruise.
looked into it, I
Nah,
forgot.
you're good, you're good, you're good.
No, but I know it was Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, so I don't know if they were in charge of
Okay.
putting it together or they were just, hired as the cruise company,
The
but
link up, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, do you remember? Because you have a shirt from that cruise, right? Or
So it's a
something?
robe.
Oh, it's a robe, that's right,
It's
that's
a
what it
robe
is.
from when I was 10 years old, so it doesn't really fit anymore, but
I
I
thought
still
it was
have
a
it.
shirt, that's why. That's so funny. Okay. I'm making a blouse, who knows?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny, and what does it have on it? Describe it for.
It's just like a little emblem, and I'll send Matt that picture too to include in here. But I think it just says like 50th anniversary, something like that has a picture of Snoopy. But I mean, they gave us like I know it was robes, towels. I think we got like a stuffed animal automatically. So a lot of good
Oh,
little things. Yeah,
that is great product integration.
right.
It's so good. I'm sitting here like, "Oh god, I really would love a freaking Peanuts cruise. That'd be awesome." Um, were your parents super into Peanuts, or did they do this specifically because you were so into it?
I don't think they were super into it themselves, but they saw, like, how much I just, like, dove in as soon as I, discovered it as a kid, so they embraced, like, my love of it. I think that they even though they weren't super into it themselves, they appreciated it for what it was, and they liked that that was something I was so into, so they definitely encouraged it.
Oh, I freaking love that. I love that so much. That's such a well done, parents. That's awesome. Do you have any favorite characters from the comic strip? Like anybody who you loved more than, like, Snoopy or Charlie Brown or any of the stereotypical.
Yeah, I mean, Snoopy was, I feel like he's kind of almost everyone's favorite, right?
Everybody's
But
favorite, yeah.
Lucy was definitely my girl. And
Really? I feel like
yes.
you're the first person I've ever heard say this, but keep going.
I loved Lucy. I mean, I also went to school for psychology, so maybe there's that little link there that I, was imprinted in my brain. Who
I
knows?
did too.
Love
I didn't
that. Love
realize
that.
that. That's so interesting. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. I was watching. I think it was the Christmas one of the holiday specials, with
Sure.
my boyfriend, and I had said, "Oh, Lucy's my favorite," and he was like, "Really? Like Lucy's your favorite?" I was like, "Yes, I love her. I love the sass. I always have."
So was it the sass? Like, what was it about Lucy that drew you to her?
I think it was. I think it was the sass. I think it was the fact that, like, she was just not afraid to say what she thought. She was one bold kid and, like, got clever enough, like, smart, maybe too smart for her own good sometimes.
Diabolical,
But
I would say
yeah, a
almost, but
little
yeah.
bit, a little
Did
bit.
you relate to that in any way?
Probably, yeah. I was a pretty, no holds bar kid, so
I forgive me. Do you have any siblings or anything?
I don't. I'm an only child.
Interesting. Ooh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was like, did you have a younger brother that you would play football with? Or
No, but I probably if I did, I probably would have treated them the same way, so
that is amazing. My character that I ended up getting obsessed with just because he was fun to draw,
Mhm.
was Rerun. And
Ooh.
Rerun, is the little brother to Linus, and Linus,
Mhm.
everybody knows because he quotes the Bible in the Christmas episode, and he's the one with the blanket. It's the only time that he drops the blanket,
Ooh.
apparently, is when Charlie Brown is like, Can someone please just tell me the meaning of Christmas?" And then he just full on says Luke 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And he drops the blanket. But Rerun was my favorite, especially in the comics, because Rerun was like, everyone thought he was just another version of Linus. Why they called him Rerun, but he was so different. He was just as, like, I don't know, philosophical and just as interesting to me. And being a little sister, I feel like I related to that a lot.
Yeah.
But it was also fun to draw his head because it's kind of like a beanbag that just sunk in a little bit, and then you do the little squiggle lines.
I would love to see some of your old drawings. If you have those, you have to send them to me.
Man, I would have to. I honestly probably have to ask. I was just thinking about that this morning as I was making my coffee. I was like, "Oh, Matt's probably gonna want some images of that stuff. I'll have to ask my parents." Yeah, I did love just the wide array of characters that Schultz created with all of these different people, and there was like lore to all of them as well.
Yeah.
Apparently, did you know that there was oh shit, what was the name of her? There was a girl in the very beginning called Charlotte Braun. Did you know about this?
No.
There was a character called Charlotte Braun who was supposed to be like the complete antithesis to Charlie Brown.
Okay.
She was shouting all the time. All of her captions were in all caps the entire time. No one really liked her, and apparently, audiences didn't like her so much that fans would write into Charles Schultz and they would say, "Please stop this. She's the most annoying character."
That's
And
so
apparently,
funny.
one girl wrote to Schultz, and Schultz decided to kill the character off, literally drawing a picture of her with an X in the head.
Oh
I
my
was
god.
like, "Damn, that's dark, Mr. Schultz."
Yeah.
Yeah, which wild to me, but he was like, yeah, he listened to his audience and he was like, "Okay, I get it." And he took the shouting lady away.
Yeah. That's so funny. No, I mean, I love, like you're saying, like, there was so much lore, like, as the comic went on and as the specials went on, like, you got to know, A, even more characters, and then B, like, really more into their lives, and, like, they weren't just, their little stereotypes that is the first thing you notice about them, like, there was whole stories behind it, and I loved that, like, the longer it went on, just seeing that, growth.
Grow and progress. Apparently, the other thing that was really cool, was that when he was about to start doing the comics for like animated
Mhm.
TV or film or whatever, there was a jazz musician who absolutely loved his comic strip, and he's the one that created the infamous do 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 do. And he also sang apparently in some of the specials. He sang, I think there's a Joe Cool song, and then there's like another
Okay.
one. But it's like the only time that he like recorded his voice for stuff. He mostly just did jazz music. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I also I just found that super interesting too, that this style reached so many different artistic points as
Mhm.
well, like not just psychology and not just like family, stuff and reaching into family dynamics, but also that he was like reaching out to like different communities that weren't necessarily as popular, um aka the introduction of Franklin.
Yeah.
um in the 60s was the first cartoon of a kid who was African American. And apparently his editors didn't want him to publish it. And do you know the quote that he said to his
No.
publishers? He's like, "Either print it the way I drew it or I quit." And I was
Good
like,
for
yeah.
him.
And like that's the kind of like optimistic, pushback that I love, where it's just
Right.
like either do it or you're not gonna get my money, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, and, like, I love too that there's so many characters that I think, regardless of his intention with them, people have, like, clung to. Like, look at Peppermint Patty, like, lesbian
Yes!
inspiration,
Lesbian
whether she was
inspiration when,
meant to be
like,
or
no
not.
one's talking about lesbian and, like, I know it I guess in the comic strip, she wasn't, like, overtly lesbian, but everybody,
She
like,
was a
they took her as the
tomboy.
yes.
Yeah.
Which was funny because I did love Peppermint Patty, growing up, but I was more drawn to Rerun
Yeah.
than than Peppermint Patty because everyone was like, "Oh, well, you're a tomboy, you must like Peppermint Patty." I was like, "She's alright," you know?
Yeah.
I wonder if she was, like, a little bit of an offshoot of Charlotte Braun.
Honestly, yeah, it might have been.
Might have been, might have been. Were there any
Yeah.
characters that you didn't like?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I was never a big fan of, my gosh, I can't think of her name right now, but she was the one that was always saying, "I have naturally curly hair," as I sit here with my naturally curly hair, but,
Sally, right?
no,
It's
no, it
Charlie's
wasn't
sister?
no, it wasn't
Was it
Sally.
not?
It was, she was
Ooh,
in the Christmas one. So she was one of the OGs. I
okay.
think her hair was like brown or red. I just remember her always saying, "And me and my naturally curly hair," and I just
Is
like
it the
found her
little
so
redhead
annoying.
girl?
Yeah, I think that was her.
Was it?
I
Oh,
think
that's
so.
so interesting because that's Charlie Brown's little love fascination.
Was it the same one? That's the little red hair girl too?
I think it is, or at least she was introduced and then maybe she became
Oh,
Frida.
maybe.
Frida and Farron. The first thing you notice about Frida is her naturally curly hair. If you don't notice it, don't worry, she'll make sure to tell you all about it.
Yeah, that's got to be her.
That's from the Peanuts website. That's so interesting. Okay, so because she was bragging about her hair, is that why you weren't about her?
To me, it was just like I was like, she's so annoying. Like it's all she ever talks about. Like, give me something more.
She's so vapid. Why are you obsessed with her, Charlie?
What about
You
you?
know,
Was there one you couldn't stand?
it honestly, it wasn't until like the specials and stuff. I hated the adults because
Fair, yeah.
I mean, because it was like want 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 want, but like at the same time, that's exactly how it felt like listening to adults at the time. Like
Yeah.
spot on. I love that they you never actually hear an adult technically. Um at least I don't think you do, but you just hear the want wants. And it was just like it was interesting for a young comedian to be like, "Oh, they're interpreting what they're saying by just responding."
Yeah.
But I hated it because I was like, "You never understand the adults, and they're always just mean, or they're always telling them to sit out, or like go away, or like something like that." Um, so yeah, that and I wasn't the biggest fan of Lucy because I was just like, "He's
She's
already depressed
polarizing, I
enough."
get it.
She is very polarizing. I'm not gonna lie. It's so fascinating to me that you love her so much.
I do want to call out too, speaking of Lucy. So I guess they had asked Schultz after his like when he was writing his final strip, his kind of goodbye, if Charlie Brown was ever going to get to kick the football.
Yeah.
And his reply was, "Oh, no, definitely not. I couldn't have Charlie Brown kick that football. That would be a terrible disservice to him after nearly half a century." But there was another interview, I guess that was, like, leading up to his final, and then
Got it.
after his final, it says, "Schultz, holding back tears, recounted the moment when he signed his final strip saying, 'All of a sudden I thought, that poor, poor kid, he never even got to kick the football. What a dirty trick. He never had a chance to kick the football.'" I just thought
Oh,
that was really cute.
oh god. And then that that strip was released the day after he passed too,
I
which
know.
wild timing.
Yeah.
Um from he colon cancer, complications of colon cancer. Which is also really interesting because he entered into the army. He shipped off to the army like the day after his mother passed away from cervical cancer, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, so an interesting sort of like dark era of time for him and the country.
Yeah.
But like what a beautiful light of like fun and, nostalgic piece of art that has continued throughout. I mean, there's not many people in the world who don't recognize Snoopy or Charlie
Yeah.
Brown.
100%. I even I went on a family trip. So we have family in Italy. And I was lucky enough to go when I was 10 years old. And I remember finding like a Peanuts just like compilation. I think there was like some history, all of that, but it was a whole book that was in Italian. And of course, me being the collector, I was like, oh, I have to get it. But
Yeah.
I didn't speak any Italian. So I
Yet.
remember like, right.
You're like,
So I
"I'll learn."
remember, yeah, I brought it back. We were staying with the relatives, and my like great great uncle. I mean, the man was probably in his 80s. He was a monk, um, very very Italian, of course. So he was reading it, and I just remember like this little old man, like face right here by the book, because he's that old, can't really see. And just kind of like giggling to himself the whole time. Like that image still sticks in my mind. It's so cute.
Oh my god, that is so adorable, and I wish I just had, like, a mental clip of that. That's
Yeah.
so cool. Did you end up learning Italian at all?
A little bit, like Duolingo helps me, but maybe not quite enough to read a whole book.
Same, same. I learned how to say "Io sono canadese." I am not Canadian, though.
There you go.
But I said that a lot when we were in Italy for our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Duolingo. Uh, oh, that's incredible. Do you remember the last movie you saw of a Peanuts film? Because I know there's a lot that
Mm.
have been released, especially Apple TV Plus has got quite a few, but I haven't seen any of the newer stuff.
I haven't seen any of the new ones either. I feel like the last one I was looking it up too, because I was trying to remember all of them. Um, the last, like, full-length movie that I remembered seeing was, Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown, and I don't remember it well, but I do remember it being a thing. I think the whole
Hmm.
title's like, let me see, Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown, Don't Come Back.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and that was in
Well,
1980, so that was newer, but not,
yeah,
like,
the
post-death,
newest, right.
yeah. But looking through this list, there's so many that I don't remember that were even still released in, the '80s and stuff. It's Flash Beagle Charlie Brown, like, plenty that I don't remember.
There's so many, and I almost feel like this is gonna be, like, the first of many deep dives that go into Peanuts gang and Schultz because
Yeah.
there's so much to mine out of this,
Uh-huh.
and, yeah, maybe we gotta do, like, watch parties or something of some of these.
Yeah. I think the one that sticks out a lot in my mind, I think it was called Come Home Snoopy. Maybe that wasn't the title, but it's,
Ooh,
yeah,
yeah.
Snoopy like runs away to go find his family.
Mhm.
And I just remember like the one song from it. It's like Snoopy, Snoopy, come on, Snoopy, come home, come home.
I
That
remember
sticks
wow,
in
just
my
memory
mind.
unlocked, because I was like, "Oh, yeah," because it was like it was a woman singing it, and it was sort of like 70s-esque style.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yeah, Snoopy, come home, where'd you go?" Oh,
Yeah.
man, yeah, I freaking love that. I remember with all the classic, like, the Christmas specials and,
Mhm.
all of those, fun random tangent side fact, apparently one of the girls in the original, voice recording couldn't read yet. I think she played Sally. She couldn't read yet, so she had to just mimic her lines line by line.
Oh.
So, like, as, like, the director said it to her, so she could just say. So you'll notice, like, some stuttering in Sally because she's still learning how to
That is
talk.
so cute.
It's so adorable. But one of my favorites that I had on DVD, and I think I ended up like either giving away or maybe an old roommate stole it after my 80th move. I don't know. But the Great Pumpkin
Mhm.
episode, I loved that so much, that whole thread of just like kind of making a deity out of like the Great Pumpkin as like a Santa Claus figure just
Yeah.
for Halloween. I Something about that was such an interesting take to me to, like, celebrate, Halloween time, but, like, in such a simple, sweet way.
Yeah, definitely a favorite. I think one of my favorite parts from that too is when they're all like showing the candy that they got after trick or treating, and Charlie Brown's like, "I got rocks."
He is the most Eeyore of kids. Uh, Poor Charlie Brown. Oh man. Well, listeners and viewers, if you have any of your favorite like episodes or long lost characters that you remember that not many people do, please comment down below. Like and subscribe to Geekscape. We will do more of these if you'd like. Um, it's there's so much to
Yeah,
this. And speaking of lore, like I mean, the amount of deep dives we could do on just like single characters alone would be interesting.
absolutely. Like, I
Yeah.
just remember I wish I remembered more, like, pieces of the lore, but
Yeah.
I just remember over the years, especially, like, watching more of the specials and stuff, like, just yeah, it goes so deep, and there's so much to that, that I remember even thinking, like, as a kid that really didn't understand how this worked, like, I was like, "Did Charles Schulz really, like, make all these? Is this, like this seems like a
He
lot of"
did. That's the
Yeah,
craziest part. There's this interview with him, I think from maybe the 90s. He's a little bit older and he's talking about how he didn't want to give the comic strip to any other artist. He's like, I do all the drawings, I do all the lettering, I do all of it because I don't want someone to say, I really love that one strip, and be like, I didn't write that.
yeah.
So, I mean, this was essentially like Lord of the Rings level
Yeah.
stories. I mean, like, there's so many backstories, there's so many different connecting pieces,
Yeah.
and it's a comic strip. And what a like beautiful, simplistic thing to be able to do that for God, how many years that came out?
About
For
50,
almost
yeah.
50.
Which I found this too, that during the strip's run, Schultz only took 1 vacation. So in 50 years, 1 5-week break in late 1997 to celebrate his 75th birthday. So they just ran, like, reruns during that time, but that was the only time.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
guy. You should have at least gone on a cruise. Um Wow. Oh, that's a hardworking man for a comic strip.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it paid off. Like,
Yeah.
Charlie Brown Christmas, it won an Emmy,
Yes.
like, clearly it's well loved around the world. So
Did you
worth all the
know
work.
did you know that the creators of that they allowed Charles Schultz to give the speech for the Emmy award speech, and
Oh,
do you know
no, I
what
didn't.
it was? A very short, very quick speech, and he was like, Charlie Brown doesn't win a lot, so this means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, that's really cute.
And, like, it's, like, such a sweet thing because I feel like, I don't know, maybe that's the thing that we all connect to where it's like, I don't win a lot, so, like, when it's recognized, it's even better, you know? And I feel like almost that is the heart of what it means to be, I guess, essentially mediocre
Yeah.
within a legendary story.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I loved this conversation. I
I did
loved
too.
diving into this. And
Yes.
now I feel like I have to go back and watch, like, so many. I didn't have time before this to rewatch, but definitely want to now.
I know, and I think if you are looking for more content or more Schultz stuff, there is you can always go to peanuts.com. You can always go to the Charles Schultz Museum.com. And then Apple TV Plus is the one that has the rights to all of the TV shows, movies, and specials, I believe, at the moment. So if you're looking for more stuff to watch, go check out Apple TV Plus for that.
Yes, and
Thank you.
listeners, if you've watched the new ones, let us know what you think because I haven't watched
Yeah.
any of the new ones, and I'm very curious.
I am too. I stumbled across there was a new TV show on Apple TV Plus
Yeah.
for the African American character, and I didn't know about this, so I think I might actually watch this after we record this.
Yes, watch a report back.
Please do, please do. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you guys again when we talk about some more Schultz.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.